it's like, well, if I throw a mic on, then I can help others the way that these people have all helped me.
Born in the heart of the Pennsylvania deer camp, with the help of experts, friends, and local legends, we bring you valuable knowledge and powerful stories for your hunting adventures. Welcome to the East Meets West Hunt Podcast with your host, Beau Martonic.
All right, we're back for another episode of the East Meets West Hunt Podcast, and today my guest is John Stallone. So, John, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, John, I've been following along with you for years now, and being able to check out your stuff through your podcast, and then I think it's most recently Howl for Wildlife. I don't know if that's the most recent endeavor that you have in your guiding stuff, but you seem to be involved in a lot of different things.
Yeah. Howl for Wildlife has definitely been consuming a lot of the free time. And it's been in the last couple of years here that we've been, that we launched. And, I still try to squeeze everything else in there. Still try to do the podcast, write a little bit, produce maybe one film a year now, and hunt as much as I possibly can on top of the guiding and the family and my other business that actually makes money. So,
what is the one that actually makes money?
I build, remodel, and service commercial swimming pools.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So
yeah, it is kind of funny that it seems like most of the people that I talk to in the hunting space that think you're full time doing that, it's usually a side gig to something construction related.
Yeah. Well, I always told people back in the day it was like one of the most honestly, if I had a 25 cents every time somebody asked me for the same question, I probably would have had a nice little nest egg. But people always ask me, how do I get into the hunting industry and how do I make money and da da da. And I always listen, just get yourself a job that affords you the time to go hunting as much as you want to go, because it's very, very difficult and only a handful of people actually make money unless you have products and stuff like that. Even that, I know guys who have what would seemingly be a prolific product line still have day jobs because there's just the money is not 100% there like you think it would be. So
yeah, no, it's extremely difficult. I learned that last year and a half becoming a partner in a product company that just I was like, oh, this will be nice, get to sell products and be able to make all this money off it. And we're doing everything American made, and it's just extremely, extremely difficult to do it. And all of us that are in it are all doing it on the side, which makes it, even more difficult from that standpoint. Sure. But it's, looking at it from the outside in, I used to think, oh man, some of these companies are just putting this giant profit margin on all of their products. And I've realized that that's not necessarily the case at all.
No, it's not. Yeah. I've worn all those hats too. I've had my own product lines. I've done things. It's not that you can't make it. Don't let me deter you. You can make it. Yeah. It just takes a lot of effort to get there. A lot of effort.
Yeah, it's when I first had started the podcast in 2018, and as I was rolling into going full time doing it in 2022, at the beginning I was like, I was pretty, people would ask me that question. I was pretty motivated in my response, and even a couple years into doing it full time, it's just I give people the disclaimer up front of not that it's definitely not impossible and you can do it, but I would look at exactly what you said of the options with other jobs that afford you the time to go do it first and foremost. And then if you do want to still do it, then just make sure you really love to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just a glutton for punishment. I just keep adding crap to my plate here,
but anyways, John, I know you're on a little bit of a time crunch, so I'd like to kind of get into a little bit of your background as far as where you're from and where you currently reside at.
Sure. Well, if you haven't noticed from my accent, I'm originally from New York. So East meets West is pertains exactly to my situation here. I moved to Arizona when I was 16. I've been living here for 33 years almost. So,
Wow.
yeah, I started hunting when I was 5, chasing whitetail with my dad, and became a bow hunter in my early teens before I left New York, and then kind of just carried that out when I got here. Actually, even when I first got here, the first couple of years, I didn't even hunt deer. It was mostly small game, and I kind of fell into the deer thing like right after high school, and elk. Then it just kind of went from there, started a TV show, started the hunting channel online. And the TV show was really just a way to promote that. Back in 2004, I started like on pro staffs and somewhat, like in the industry, I guess, back in 2001, and started writing for magazines at some point. I don't even remember what year that was, but started my podcast in 2005. Did that for about 6 years. I would produce one a month just for the Hunting Channel Online members. And then I took like a 2-year hiatus, and then I kind of brought it to the masses, I think in 2015. I started, putting them on iTunes and whatnot. And when I did that, I started doing it once a week, and I've been doing it once a week since.
Nice. Yeah. No, the Days in the Wild is the name of it, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
Used to be called Interviews with the Hunting Masters, but that was a real mouthful, and it was a little pretentious. I think people were like, well, this guy thinks he's a hunting master. So I changed it to Days in the Wild. Also, my TV show was Days in the Wild. My guiding service is Days in the Wild. My blog was Days in the Wild. So it was like, just make it all the same. It made sense.
Yeah. Well, so what what made you want to get into the guiding side of things? Like how did that kind of come along? Well, you said you've been living in Arizona for 33 years now, so quite a bit of time out there and learning the Western style of hunting.
Yeah. So the guiding thing started probably longer than I've been married, less than 20 years. So probably like 17, 18 years ago, something like that. I'd have to look exactly, but it had started off with, I used to give away hunts with the Hunting Channel, and it was like a hunting experience to go hunting with me. Because I'm such a huge celebrity and all that. But we used to give away hunts, and just to keep myself legal, I went and got my guide's license. And that kind of stemmed into me working for a couple of guys here and there. And then, I don't know, 3-4 years after doing that, I should just start outfitting. And then I started outfitting, and I employed guys underneath me, and, we started getting a little bit more serious about it. And I've since pulled back in the last few years. Like I guide probably 3 or 4 people myself a year. Everything else is done by the guys that work for me. It's mainly just a timing thing. The last couple of years, we got into guiding for bow fishing. I used to only do it for myself, and then I went like crazy, and I built a $65,000 crazy boat and all this stuff. And so I was like, I got to do something, justify the cost of this, because I definitely don't go bow fishing enough for myself to do it, or I don't do tournaments or anything like that. So, we started guiding for bow fishing, and that at least helps pay for the cost of the boat and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I again, don't do it like super duper serious. Like I say serious, I don't depend on it for an income.
Yeah.
As we discussed, my income's mainly from my pool business, but I just it's just a way to stay relevant and stay in the game and do things I like, and
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And like from the from that side of things with the bow fishing, especially so you bow fish in Arizona?
Yep.
What for what species?
So the lakes that the lake that I typically go to, because it is the clearest, we are only allowed to shoot gizzard, shad, carp, and I believe tilapia. There's not a whole lot of tilapia in that lake, but so it's mainly gizzard, shad, and carp. But if we go to some of the other lakes, we can fish for catfish, and there's a lot more tilapia, and there's other invasive species that we're allowed to bow fish for. So.
Yeah, bow fishing's so much fun. I started doing it in college, and then my buddy Ethan has a guiding service in New York, and we go up to the Finger Lakes and go up there for carp, and go up there usually once a summer with him, and it's an absolute blast to do it, and super frustrating at the same time, especially like at the beginning of the night when you haven't done it for a year and trying to figure out where you're aiming low and being able to, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's some nights that I'm on fire, and then others I can't hit the side of a barn. It's like it's so weird. It's a tough thing. Like you can never really get I feel like regular archery, even traditional archery, like okay, once you get the aiming point or you get the rhythm of it, it's very repeatable, and then. In the bow fishing thing, it's like always like forever changing because you don't really know if that fish is 3 feet of water or 8 feet of water. Sometimes like it'll look shallow, especially when a really clear lake and I got really good lights. The only time it's kind of like more of a slam dunk, and if you miss, it's like really on you, is when they're like super shallow, like when they're breaching water or whatever, or like less than a foot of water.
Yeah. No,
other than that, it's like, it's a guessing game. It's like, okay, is this really, do I hold here? Do I hold here?
Yeah. It is. Like I said, it's a ton of fun. And do you do that typically during the summer months, or is there a certain time of year?
Well, the best time of year is in the spring, during the spawn, from about beginning of March all the way through May is usually really good. It tapers off with the carp, and then the gizzard shad get really good in the summertime because they actually follow the boat. They follow the lights that come up to the vibration. And, they're fast, super fast fish. They matrix your arrow. They have a very quick reaction time. And you're shooting at a fish that's probably 10 inches long on a big one, 12, real big ones like 12, but
yeah.
And they're paper thin, it's a panfish basically.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that would be really difficult to be able to hit. Cause I even know, like I said, with carp, which is the only experience I have with bow fishing is carp, and they're getting pretty big in size, and it still can be difficult on some nights to feel like you're hitting your spot.
Yeah, for sure.
So, in addition to the bow fishing, what else are you guiding there? Because you guide, and you said both Arizona and South Dakota. Was that what you were telling me?
Correct. Yes. So in Arizona, I guide for coos deer, mule deer, desert bighorn sheep, elk, javelina, and predators. I don't guide for antelope. I don't guide for buffalo. Don't guide for bear. I don't want to take people's money on something that I don't feel like I'm an expert in, or that I have, or that I have a guide who is an expert in. I want somebody to have the best possible experience, and the species that I just named off are the ones that we do very well on, and we provide a lot of opportunity to harvest. So we stick to that. And in South Dakota, I go there for 15 days a year. I have leases, and we hunt private land for whitetail and mule deer archery.
Okay. Nice.
So
nice. That would be pretty cool. And I went to South Dakota for the first time last year hunting mule deer, and it's just a lot of fun, which South Dakota is a huge state, but we were just doing spot and stock mule deer, and it was a lot of fun getting to go there and do it. But everyone, I met some guys up in Alaska when I was moose hunting last year, and there was a guy, there was a bunch of guys from South Dakota, and they were talking about, they're like, when I said I was going, they're like, man, you got to go for the whitetail. They're like, you're a whitetail guy. That's, South Dakota has some hogs there.
Yes, they do. This was the only rifle hunter we had. We had a rifle hunter, and it was a young lady. It was her first deer, and she shot like a 186 crazy whitetail. Beautiful freaking. Yeah. I was super impressed with it. But, yeah, awesome whitetail. I've shot a couple of good whitetail there. When I used to hunt in the Black Hills on public land, and I had an outfitter buddy of mine too that I hunted on his land. I think I took like 4 or 5 whitetail from South Dakota. I've been hunting there since 2004, I believe. My first couple of antelope I shot were in South Dakota. I love South Dakota. I've only been there, I think, 2 or 3 times where I didn't get something. So, and I've been hunting there, like I said, since 2004 till, and I think I had maybe missed 1 or 2 years from since then to now. So, and South Dakota's been good to me. It's a good state, target rich environment, lots of good opportunity. Although the deer herd is definitely dwindling. I think they putting some restrictions on some of the tags now and lowered some of the draw odds and all that, lowered some of the draw opportunity to try to match what they're seeing in the deer herds, because they got hit with a few different diseases and so on and so forth, and kind of knocked a lot of it down and had some bad winters. And so it's good to see that they're trying to, match the deer herd to the opportunity. So
yeah, I mean, when we were out there, that was again my first time. My cousin had hunted the area a couple years prior, and he said it was a completely different experience from what we saw versus what they saw 2 years prior. The 2 years prior, it was like multiple stalks a day on bucks, and to 2023, it took us we did get one killed the first day, and then after that, it was just to try to find another buck was really difficult. And then towards the end, we started finding some, but the numbers were not what they had been, even 2 years prior in that specific area.
Yeah. Not last year, but the year before that, they had 2 pretty big die-offs between the winter and I think it was EHD. I don't remember exactly which disease rolled through there, but something rolled through there and they had some issues and they lost quite a few. I lost a large chunk. I want to say like 30% of the herd.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that definitely makes an impact. But I mean, it is good to see that they're stepping in and trying to help, reduce that curve and keep those numbers in a good place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, although from a non-resident standpoint, it definitely sucks as things get more difficult to be able to get tags. But I also understand it too. So sure. It's a tough one.
Not many people share your view. Like I run across a lot of people that just like, oh, you're taking away opportunity. It's my right. It's this, it's that. And, we always talk about following the science. And if the science says, hey, we can only put 10 tags in here, then we need to follow that and honor that. And with the hopes that it's going to get better so that we can have those, the numbers like we did in the past or previously, whatever. So,
yeah, no, I mean, to me, it just makes sense from the standpoint of we need to be thinking of what the future of that looks like, not just what it does good for us right now, as far as what is the future going to look like in 10, 20 years versus what's, why don't I have a tag right now sort of deal. And like exactly. I said, that's hard to, it's hard to come to grips with. And we're all, selfish in one way or another about it. And, obviously I'd like to be able to get a tag anywhere I want, but that's just not the case. And I agree with you on following the science behind it versus, just looking at it from a personal standpoint, because everyone's going to have their own opinions on things versus, it's easier to be able to follow what the science is telling you versus, bringing people's opinions in and that sort of philosophy.
Yeah, 100%. It's tough because, like we were saying earlier, most people kind of, I don't want to say, maybe selfish is a good word for it, but have that selfish viewpoint. I just want to hunt. I don't want to worry about. I mean, for instance, I'm pushing 50, and I can pretty much hunt out the rest of my days and probably not see any drastic changes, or at least be able to continue to hunt. But what will my kids see? What will my grandkids see? What will their grandkids see? And so that's why it's important that as hunters, we always have to think about it and look to the future. What's coming after us? If you really love what you're doing, if you love hunting, you love everything about the outdoor life, then you gotta think about the future. You gotta think about what you're doing today affects, 3-4 generations down from now. There's a Greek proverb, and I cite it all the time, and I'm sorry if people have heard me say this before, but it's translated. It goes, society becomes like really great when old men plant trees of which the shade they know they'll never lay under. And it's like, that always resonated with me. Like, if you want to continue on, I mean, sometimes you have to do things that's not going to necessarily benefit you in the immediate, like you got to think about the future constantly. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that makes a whole lot of sense for it. Is that kind of what your reasoning was for, we'll come back to the guiding thing, but while we're on this topic, is that kind of what your reason for co-founding with Howl?
Yes, a lot of it. Some of it was that's selfish. I shouldn't say selfish, but that same mindset. I want to protect what I have so I can continue to do it. But the more I got into it and the more I realized that, like, I'm really not just doing this for me. Part of it's for me, but most of it's for my son, my potential grandkids, their grandkids, and so on and so forth. So, yes. Simple answer.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So do you want to explain a little bit what Howl for Wildlife is? And I got to spend some time with Charles out in Salt Lake City.
Nice.
Yeah, back at the Western Hunt Expo. Got to meet him in person. Finally, we've exchanged messages back and forth. And earlier in the year when I had Dan Gates on and was helping with some of that earlier on back in January and February, and always been a fan of it. And I think it's been, I just had my spreadsheet pulled up. I think the last couple of years that I had, every quarter I donate a portion of the proceeds of the apparel sales off my website to a conservation organization of my choice during that quarter. And Howl's been in one of the quarters the last couple of years.
Oh, that's fantastic. And, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I really like it because I guess I just asked you a question and I'm talking over you, but I'll just give you a brief. What drew me to it was we're all so busy on things, and as much as we should be keeping up with a lot of things, it's so easy to not understand what's going on. And Howl just made it so easy for me that when there's an initiative that comes up, you go to the website, has draft emails written up there for you, put in your information, and basically hit send, and you do all that work for us, and it makes it simple and it really gives you no excuse to not do it, because it doesn't take a whole lot of time to try to find contacts and who am I supposed to reach out to for this issue or what's going on here, and looking at it. And one thing I talked about with Dan on the side, when I think it might have been when I was out at the expo there, I was like, man, it's got to be, super difficult with always dealing with these negative situations and continuing to keep that motivation and continuing to keep going. Mm-hmm. And man, I give all of you guys all the credit in the world for being able to do that.
Thank you. It's not an easy task. It weighs on you a lot. There are a lot of days you come home and you're like, man, you feel like a lot of times you carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, even though it's just this one little niche of hunting. But this is our world, right? Like, we live from this stuff. So, as far as, well, I mean, there was a lot to unpack. You said a lot of things, but we realized that there was a lot of obstacles in the past, and that's what we were set out to do with Alpha Wildlife, is to eliminate as many obstacles and make the easy button, to make it as easy as possible for somebody to get involved. And believe it or not, it's still not easy enough for people. Like, whatever, it takes 30 seconds out of my life. It's too much time, so we're not going to get everybody. But we would love to. Because the crazy thing about it is, like, Alpha Wildlife has been able to literally move mountains with thousands of people, and the statistics are kind of wishy-washy, somewhere between 14 to 16 million hunters in the United States alone. And if we had 14 million hunters getting involved every time there was some kind of an anti or pro hunting policy, we would never lose, or we would win every single time. Every single time. It's, if people just thought about it like that, and I get a little heated when somebody says they don't have enough time, because, I mean, I kind of gave you a little bit of an insight of what I do and what I have on my plate, but it's literally, I get up at 4:00 in the morning, go to the gym, and I then, by the time I get home, it's bust ass. Hopefully I could say that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good.
From the time I get back from the gym till 10:00 at night, I'm go. When somebody tells me they don't have enough time, like, that's never been an excuse for me. Like, you find time. And what Hal has done is made it so that really, I mean, you spend between 5 to 10 minutes a month. I mean, if you can't find 5 to 10 minutes a month to protect something that you love doing, then I don't know what to tell you. You gotta look at your life. It's a little too much, but so yeah, I don't know, kind of going in circles there, but
no. Basically, so how like when you look at something like Howl for Wildlife, how do people know of, like, when issues come up? Is it becoming a member and you're sending emails, or how does that necessarily work?
Sure. So we've created an alert system, and basically, for one, we're the only organization that I know that has a free membership. So if you go on there and you don't feel like it's the right time, or you're not quite sure yet, and you don't want to become a paying member, you become a free member. And with that, you'll get action alerts. So every time there's an action that you need, that we want you to get involved in, you'll get an email that says, hey, Beau, it's help us save snipe hunting in Louisiana, and you go on to the website, it'll take you to the action center. If you're using the email, you'll click on it, take you right to the action center, and then you read through the action if you want, and then just sign your name and email, sometimes phone number, sometimes it asks for a full address, depending on the governing body or the decision makers of that policy. And you hit send, and it literally takes, I mean, if you read through it, it probably take you about 4 to 5 minutes. If you didn't read through it, it'd take you about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So it's pretty dang easy.
And the amount of time that I would imagine most people spend mindlessly scrolling, I think you can find the time to be able to read through it. And it's pretty simple. Like I have one pulled up over here right now where it's very straightforward, couple paragraphs. Here's a summary of the proposed changes in bullet points. Here's what you can do. And then here's something we wrote up for you here. Put your name, address, state. You can edit the letter or email or however it's being sent to go out to them, and click add your Howl, and that's it. And you know, Dan and I talked about this at length, but I don't think it can be stated enough. Is what I feel like is, maybe I'm incorrect with this, but why a lot of people don't get involved with a lot of these situations is they're like, oh, it's not my state, I don't hunt there. They just don't care about it. And why does that affect me? But I guess I'd like you to explain that and why people should care.
Sure. So let's give an example. Let's work through it. Okay. Well, I forgot. But you told me, where are you from? I forgot.
Pennsylvania.
Okay. So you're in Pennsylvania. You know, you're a PA whitetail hunter. That's what you do. That's what you love doing. And I'm here in Arizona. I'm a bear hunter. Okay. You don't hunt bears. You're probably never going to come to Arizona. You maybe come to Arizona, hunt coos there at some point in your life, but it's not high on your bucket list. So seemingly me losing bear hunting here in Arizona doesn't really affect you. Like, I feel bad for that guy, but it's not something I do, so why should I get involved? So bears, even in Pennsylvania, are probably actually more so in Pennsylvania than Arizona, are the number one deciding factor on deer herds, right? They're the biggest predator for deer. Okay, so more bears on the landscape means less deer. Less deer means less funding. Less funding means less opportunity, and it just kind of like trickles down. Okay, so let me back up a little bit. Let me start by saying this: we hunters have the biggest voice at the conservation table. We are, even though we're not the largest in number as a stakeholder, we have the most sway because our system that is in place, the North American model of conservation, is a user pay system. We pay for access. We pay for habitat development. We pay for wildlife management, so on and so forth. So if you think of the conservation table as a big pie, we're the largest piece of that pie. And anti-hunting is always trying to minimize our voice at the conservation table. So any time they can do that, they're going to do that. So let's go back to our example. If I lose bear hunting here in Arizona, I'm a bear hunter, you lose me. You lost me as a hunter. I no longer hunt anymore. Bear hunting is what I did. And now you lost my physical voice. But you also lost my funding, which is another deduction of that pie. And whatever funding was coming from bear hunting in Arizona is no longer going to funding other projects here. So the deer herd might actually go down. And if the deer herd goes down, now there's even less hunters hunting deer because there's less opportunity. Now that voice gets shrunk even further because there's less funding, less people doing it. So it's like this trickle down effect. It also sets precedents. Like if I lose bear hunting here, what's to say they don't come to Pennsylvania to take bear hunting all the way from me over there? Now you had Dan on, so on that particular thing in that ballot initiative, they're trying to add language or they added language into that bill. And if it passes, that language defines their definition of trophy hunting. And that definition of trophy hunting, the way they have it worded, literally can be transposed onto any species. And it's going to give them legal precedence because it's a statute. It's not a rule. It's not a commission thing or game and fish thing. It's a statute. So they'll be able to cite that in other states and come after it. Mm-hmm. We could also look at it federally. Okay, so I don't know if your listeners know about Pittman-Robertson. Okay, so Pittman-Robertson is a fund, an excise tax on specific sport equipment, specifically, guns, ammo, bows and arrows, stuff like that. I'm no longer bear hunting, so potentially I don't need a gun anymore. I don't need a gun. I don't need a bow. I'm not buying these things. I'm definitely not buying them as frequently as I was because I'm not partaking in this activity. I might maybe still keep it because I like it. So if I'm not buying these things, I'm not contributing federally to Pittman-Robertson. Now, let's say Pittman-Robertson was $1.5 billion, and now because they lost bear hunting in Arizona, that $1.5 billion is 1.475. Okay, just an arbitrary number. Now, when they go to divvy up the big pie of Pittman-Robertson and to take the chunk for Pennsylvania, that chunk for Pennsylvania just got smaller. So it did directly affect you. And there's so many little interconnections. We need to understand that we're all in this together. This is not just an Arizona issue or a Pennsylvania issue, that this is a hunting issue and a sportsman's issue. And we need to, anytime anything comes up anywhere that's going to take away from our voice, we need to stand up. Because eventually their goal is to get rid of all hunting. They're just starting with the low-hanging fruit. And if that's bear hunting in Arizona, that's where they're going to start. But eventually they're going to come for deer hunting in Pennsylvania. It might start with bow hunting. Bow hunting's, not ethical. We're wounding too many deer. They suffer too much, all the BS lies that you can possibly think of. And they get rid of bow hunting. Now you only have gun hunting. And then gun hunting is going to be the next on the chopping block. That's just the way they work. It's death by a million cuts, and they're going to keep chipping away at the mountain until that mountain is a boulder. So,
yeah, no, you're 100% right. And they always start with the low hanging fruit, the things that there's not as many people caring about, and then it's just like you said, the death by 1,000 cuts, just slowly getting in there and building their way up through and being able to do that. I think that is one of those things that it's, to me, just it's so clear to be able to see that can happen and why we should care about those things. For example, when I'd see some of these different things go against trapping and I've never trapped in my entire life. My family has, and my grandfathers were big into it. My dad was big into it. I have not personally done it. So does that mean I shouldn't care about it? Absolutely not, because then you don't do that, and you're not managing those predators. We're already seeing it across the board. Where not as many people are doing that, and it's creating, and there's more predators out there, and that's hurting the game animals that you are hunting and the wildlife that everyone wants to see and be able to view. And I just think it's so important for all of us. Sportsmen and women to stay together on that and be active when we can on those things.
Yeah, 100%. The writing's on the wall. They want to do away with hunting. Hunters, we hunt. We want to hunt. We want to see wildlife. It's not our primary goal is to fight anti-hunting. It's not hey, let's go do this. But their primary goal is to get rid of us. They don't do restoration. They don't do habitat, improvement. They don't do anything to put animals back on the landscape, except for sometimes they get initiatives where, relocation of wolves or whatever. But they're not doing anything to promote wildlife. So their main function in life is to take away what you do. And that's why they're so effective, because think about how passionate you are about, you probably spent 30 hours poring over maps trying to figure out where you're going to hang your tree stand for a whitetail hunt. Well, that's what they're doing on their free time. How do I get rid of Beau? How do I get rid of Beau?
Yeah.
They're looking at their map and trying to figure out where, their strategy constantly.
Yeah,
So,
because we have a life and passion for things that actually hurts us in the in the taking out of the time on it. But no, you're exactly right. And I just think that what you guys are doing is so great, and it's one of those things that there are a lot of really great conservation organizations out there, and I support quite a few of them. And it's just sometimes, though, it's difficult to be able to see what are they actually doing, where is the money going, how is this doing something. And I feel like it's very clear, and you can see the action when you click that button to send the alerts and be able to do that. Like, you're actually making a difference with it.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that makes it makes it super easy, and makes it very clear that it's an organization that I'd like to support, and that's why I was looking forward to be able to have you on there.
No, thank you. Anytime we gives us, that we get a platform to talk to people within hunting, to understand what we're up against, and what we need and what they need to do is huge. So we appreciate you for sure.
Yeah. Well, is there anything on Howl that you wanna say here before I transition back into some stuff down there in the Southwest?
Other than just, there's no excuse for you not to become a free member, at least. I mean, we'd love you to support us financially, because this is not an inexpensive endeavor. And your financial support goes a long way. We need that. But just get on there and become a free member. No shorter if you're back. We already talked about how easy it is. So let's get involved. If you care about this, it's time to step up.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I'll put links in there so anybody can go find it, but it's pretty simple, howlforwildlife.org, and you can find that. And also all the social platforms do a really good job on there of being able to put it out there, so when you aren't checking your emails and doing things, but you are mindlessly scrolling, hopefully it pops up in your feed and can help remind you there.
Absolutely.
But back on going back to Arizona, that's kind of an interesting one to me from a non-resident standpoint. When I look at the state of Arizona, many times it doesn't come first to the forefront of my mind. And I've heard you talk about some different things there where there's some issues with some of the over-the-counter tags that are available with the popularity that is gained and everything there. But from a non-resident standpoint, how should we look at Arizona? Is that something that you feel like is a good opportunity place? It's more of a place where you're putting in points for years to have the experience of a lifetime. How are you looking at that, or how should we look at that?
I mean, that's pretty individualized, I guess. There's not a whole lot of opportunity for somebody to just say, hey, I'm going to get a tag and go. Like, we do still have an over-the-counter deer tag. And when that was kind of unlimited or not in the confines of the new system that we're in, I would have said, definitely something you want to come and do as often as possible while you're trying to achieve that special tag.
Mm-hmm.
I would say Arizona is definitely something you want to maybe come. It depends on how old you are, but I would say, like, if you want a quick pop, put in for a Coues deer rifle tag, or play the OTC game, and try to get a tag. I think there's 2,200 tags given for out of state, so it's first come, first serve. Try to get a tag. Come during the OTC season, get a feel for what the terrain is, what you're going to see. Now, mind you, when you come in January or December, it's a very different game than coming during an October or November rifle hunt. You're going to see a lot more deer. You're going to see a lot more game, period, because it's the rut. And outside of the rut, the early season stuff, like when it's super hot here and they're still in velvet, you could see a lot more deer then. But you're dealing with snakes and you're dealing with the heat. I know it's 110 degrees in the desert. It's pretty brutal. But if you're willing to brave it, it can be very, very lucrative. It can be fruitful, I should say. I would approach it like this. Like, if you want a dream hunt, Arizona elk hunting here is pretty tough to beat. If you want a really good archery hunt, like, you could keep applying for, the Kaibab or the strip, whatever, and that might take you 20 years. You could have a good time during that OTC. I've been able to harvest really nice deer on that hunt. You're going to see a lot of deer. There is quite a bit of crowding, especially with the new system that they have in place, because as units close, people move to the units that are open and they get more crowded. I think it's one of these places that I would put in for points. Not put in for points. I would put in every year because you have a mathematical chance of drawing. I've had guys draw sheep tags with 2 points on a random, and I've had people that have 30 points that have never drawn. So, but you always have a mathematical chance because we have random tags. So it's definitely something I would, you have to buy your license. Let me back up. Since you have to buy your license, come here to go cruise deer hunting, because cruise deer tag, even as out of state, in certain seasons, it's like a 2 to 3 point thing. So every couple of years you can come. And since you have to buy your license, you might as well be coming to hunt here, right? So doing that, and then the years that you don't draw a rifle tag, you could pick up try to get an OTC tag and hunt here as much as possible and learn the landscape, learn the way of glassing and moving about here in the desert or even in the high country. And then just apply for a good elk hunt. Because if you draw an elk hunt, even in a mediocre unit, you're going to have a much better experience here than you are, let's say, in like Colorado or, Montana or Wyoming. No offense to those states. I've hunted them all and I hunt them every year. I'm going to Montana this year. But Arizona elk hunting is pretty special, so
yeah.
Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah. Well, I have a few questions within it. So, like you had said that when you apply, it's one of the states where you have to buy a license to be able to do so. But you can time it correctly where you can essentially apply 2 years in a row under one license. Is that correct?
Sometimes, yes. If you buy, so you're certain hunts, yes, I should say. You can buy when you buy your license, it's good for 360 days. If you buy, you can apply. Let's say your license expires today. Okay, it's June 11th, and the draw for deer was like 4 days ago. I don't remember. I think it was Friday. It might have been Friday. Where it ended. So if you bought this in 2023, June 11th, you bought it the day that you applied last year, and you have a window where you can apply this year. But the thing is, if you draw and you don't have a license, you could potentially lose that tag.
Okay, that's okay. And I guess I was looking at:
are you going to have a license when the draw comes out? And if you're not paying attention and don't buy it as soon as you find out, you could potentially lose the tag.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm glad you said that because my strategy is flawed there. If I would if I would have drawn, but I had. Let me see here. Now I'm looking at my spreadsheet here. Now I haven't bought deer points in a few years there, but I've been applying for elk for 6 years now. Do you find like, I mean, are there tags that you can get at like in a 5 to 10 year window for elk that are worthwhile doing, or like from that standpoint? I know there's an early and a late season from that standpoint, and from what I've always heard, and I don't know this, and this is what I'm going to ask you, but late season it can be tough hunting, late archery. But what are some of your thoughts there?
So, I mean, I like the late season archery elk hunt. I've had it personally 3 times, and I've been successful 2 times out of the 3. That is definitely something you could do with 5 or 6 points as an out-of-state person. I think you have a better chance out-of-state as an out-of-state person than an in-state person has on that hunt, because not a lot of people are coming from out-of-state to go on that hunt. Typically, people that come to Arizona, they want the screaming bulls. They want that experience. You're not going to have that. You're going to be hunting big, 800-pound deer is what you're going to be doing. You're going to be glassing. You're going to find a bull. He might be with cows. He might not be with cows. He might be in a bachelor herd. Depends on the weather usually and timing of the latest portion of the rut. But sometimes there'll be, cows. I've had bugles in that November hunt. It takes place in November. But you have a really good opportunity to get an elk. It's just what's the experience that you want. Basically.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And the I think you also brought up a good point there of you might as well apply for it because you do have that opportunity even at the lower point levels, even though it might be, minuscule, that you still have that opportunity to be able to draw a tag just by putting your name in the hat. Yeah,
absolutely. That's a good hunt. I think it's something that you can have a lot of success. And it's also a way, again, like, hey, if, I don't know, what service you use. I use Go Hunt or whatever. And I look and I could draw this tag in 2 years. Maybe I might do that hunt just so I could go learn that unit. And then once I did it, I'm going to start applying for the rut archery hunt.
Mm-hmm.
That's another way to look at it. I'm one of these guys. I hunt everywhere from East Coast to West Coast. And, I'm always just trying to look for opportunity. Mm-hmm. So whatever's going to put tags in my pocket and give me the opportunity to go, that's what I'm going to do. So that's the way I always look at things. Not everybody's got that. Everybody has different goals. So
when it comes to, whether you're guiding people or just in general, I feel like people coming from the East out West, especially a place like Arizona, is a completely different experience, with a lot of it being, more open type country, glassing type areas. And I know that you have, big timbered areas as well, but a lot of that being that scenario. What's one of those things that you, or either a piece of advice or mistake that you see people make that they can think about when they come out there?
Sure. Learn how to glass. Glassing is key. And I would say 90% or better of successful hunters here are using a tripod. So it's getting familiarized with that type of equipment. You're not going to go handhold your 8x32 Nikons and have the same success as somebody who's sitting on a tripod with 1556 Saguaros. You're bringing a knife to a gunfight. Unfortunately, that's where I see the biggest thing. And I think, from a guiding perspective, and I hate to I don't want to bash on people, but a lot of times people are like, oh yeah, I shoot so good and this and that and whatever. Just being well practiced with your equipment and understanding the limits of what you can do and what the equipment can do is huge, because in order to make, over here, a lot of times, especially cruise deer hunting, you're either shooting from a very close position or pretty damn far away, like 400 or 500 yards. And, I know my experiences gun hunting back in New York, I used a 35 Marlin and we didn't shoot like 150 yards. It was like a hell of a long shot.
Mm-hmm.
So, if that's what you're used to, you got to find a way to practice differently.
Mm-hmm.
What the other thing that we have is target acquisition. You could be looking at a hillside that's 200 yards away and you don't even see the deer standing there, like with your naked eye. And then you put your binoculars, like, oh shit, there's 3 deer standing there. So there's a lot of differences.
All right, so we had said that we were going to be done with the episode here with John, but we were talking afterwards. He had to run to a meeting and just didn't feel like we dove as deep into some things as we wanted to. So jump back on a few hours later.
Yep, absolutely.
I appreciate you doing that, John. It is so tough to when you have a rather large size of things you want to cover in a short period of time to really get in depth with it. And I really did want to talk to you more on the hunting side of it, as you have a ton of experience and have had a lot of success in that realm. And as someone who's went from east to west in real life and actually made the move there 33 years ago, that's it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I'm not sure how impressive it is, but yes, I definitely did all that stuff.
Well, when we ended the last part of it there, we were talking about glassing quite a bit in the open country. So this year, I was also kind of, from a personal reason, diving into it. I have an elk tag this year that's taken me years to draw, and it's in more of an open country type area. And most of my elk hunting has been some mix of open and dark timber, or just dark timber. I haven't done a whole lot of that style of it. And you were talking about glassing for it, and just kind of wanted to dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the main things you need to think about when you're, so an elk hunt might be a little different situation. Like I usually don't pack my 15s unless it's a late elk hunt. That's a different story. But during a September elk hunt, bow hunt, I typically won't pack my binos, and I more than likely won't pack my tripod. Sometimes I will. Like if I know that the bugling's really slow, or if it's an area that, they typically don't communicate a lot, I will. And I have a very small, very lightweight setup for that. It's Canati or Canity, whatever, however they want to pronounce it, but it's Canati to me. They make a backpacking setup for a tripod. It's really super lightweight. So tripod, and I use the Tricer head on it because that's even lighter weight than their head. It's like 4 ounces or whatever.
Yeah, I just bought that last year. That thing is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts how freaking light that thing is. So that's not a lot away for me to pack around. So when I'm elk hunting, typically I'm covering, anywhere from 5 on a real low end to 12 miles a day, with the average being somewhere around 7. I don't want to carry a lot of crap. Mm-hmm. And elk are large enough that I can handhold and pick things up pretty easily. So I don't really need the stability like I would if I was hunting coos deer or even muleys and thicker stuff, elk kind of stand out. But not to say that a tripod and good set of binos doesn't help, because it does help. I've had situations. I could actually think of one right now. Charles Whitwell and myself, we were in Idaho 2 years ago, and I glassed up a bull for him to go after, and I was using my tube as a tripod, just to hold steady, because they were bedded in this thick stuff, and I could just see like ears and antlers and, like barely make it out. And had I not been glassing the way I did, I don't think I would have seen them. And they were stationary, so I was constantly trying to hold on that position. And, you sit there trying to handhold in one spot forever. Pretty difficult to do. So I really wish I had my tripod at that point. I wasn't hunting anymore. I already had tagged out. I could have, I didn't have my bow. I could have easily carried a tripod, but I didn't bring it with me. We were in Idaho, so I didn't have a chance to go get a new one. But most of the time I will not, on an elk hunt, will not bring it unless I know that glassing is going to be my primary. Thank you. Would be my primary. I can't say the word. Was going to be my primary style of hunting.
Okay.
If I know I'm going to be calling a lot, or chasing bugles, whatever, I typically will not bring it. So.
Gotcha. And I guess with that, I mean, you've chased a lot of elk in a lot of different areas over bunch of different states as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I've been fortunate enough to hunt elk in Washington, Oregon, in Utah, Wyoming, Montana, Colorado, Arizona, of course, New Mexico.
Okay. So basically the elk states.
Yeah. I haven't had a Nevada tag yet. I haven't, I did Idaho. I didn't say Idaho too. Yeah, I think that's all of them, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Other than like the Dakotas and stuff that have some elk and everything there, but the main elk states, I think you just about named them all.
Yep. Yeah, and I put in for Pennsylvania and Tennessee and Kentucky and all those other ones too.
Yeah, I actually just had a podcast come out today where I was talking with a guy about the Pennsylvania draws and just kind of some of the, although most of it is kind of hoping and wishing for it, there are some things that you can do with applying to help your odds a little bit there. But my points are growing quite a bit there, and I haven't drawn yet. But I also only put in for bulls, so it's which lowers your opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know that I'd want to go all the way to Pennsylvania to shoot a cow.
Yeah. And I have the elk very close to me. So I get to see them all the time. It's I have a rental property that's in the middle of the elk and see them all the time and, go shed hunting and do all that stuff for them. But, it's pretty neat to be able to see. But yeah, I put in for the eastern states as well for, Kentucky, Pennsylvania and some of those other tags. But, with, when you're talking about, I guess the states that you have hunted, what are some of your favorite hunts, or what have you done? What are some of your favorite hunts that you've done, and why for elk hunting?
For elk hunting, I don't know what it is about that question. I hate that question because I love doing everything, and I have such a hard time picking. I even if you ask me what my favorite species is to go at, it's literally the one that's in season. The one. That's the one that I'm most excited about. But my favorite elk hunt was probably in 2017 in Utah. I drew a pretty primos tag, and it was on fire. The elk were doing with like you see in a video, like the bugling, the interactions, the opportunities, it was all there. And, you know, not that I didn't bust my butt getting up and down the hills and hiking all over the place to create opportunities, because we did work, and I didn't end up shooting one until the last day. It was just one of those magical years. And it was actually a magical year. I talked to guys in different states, and then we had 2 hunters here that were hunting with my guides in Arizona, and they had just a magical experience. So I don't know, it was just that timing of when the rut was, or what the weather patterns, or whatever the case may be. It was just, that was the year. 2017 was just sick. I shot a really nice bull. Never had him officially scored. He's probably somewhere in the 350s range. Not like an absolute giant bull, but he's a really showy bull. He looks really, really, like, if you look at him, you're like, automatically your head goes to the upper 360s, like pretty quick. I just don't know if he's there because he's got some short tines at some points, but anyway, that doesn't really matter to me. Like, inches never really matter. But
yeah, it's funny. From, you know, a guy out east, it was 2 years ago when I was in Montana. I got an opportunity to bull of similar size, and I ended up hitting a branch. I was only 18 yards, and I skipped it up and hit him in the backstrap, and I was, you know, really devastated by it. But if you would ask me, I would have told you that bull was a 370, 380 type bull, you know. And then we had it filmed, so I'd showed some guys at the trailhead. It was the night that I had hit it. We were going back in the morning, and he was like, no, he's like, you know, the 350 to 360 type bull. And I was like, man, I can't imagine what a, you know, one bigger than that looks. Cause it was just like, to me, that was just incredible. Now we have them here in PA, but seeing them, you know, for my experience, elk hunting had been Colorado, Idaho, you know, a 300-inch bull is a big bull. Yeah. And that, so it was wild to me to be able to see that. And honestly, like, even with this tag that I'm going for here, like, I'd love to shoot a nice bull, but I'm still relatively new to elk hunting and want to get the reps in, and just elk hunting is so much fun to me, and chasing them around and all the different areas to be able to go to. Like, that's what's fun to me. And that experience, like you said, in Utah sounded like just the epitome of elk hunting. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how I say this without sounding like a conceited bastard, but I've had a lot of opportunities on a lot of different species, and I had that same philosophy, man. If I see something that makes me happy and it happens to be a 280 bull this time, I'm going to go for it. Like, I've never been able to, I shouldn't say never. I've done it a couple. I just did it in South Dakota and you know what? I was doing it in South Dakota this year, and at the very end of the trip, the very last day, I shot a buck that I wouldn't normally shoot. You know, from a management standpoint, I wouldn't shoot it. But I'm never like that, and I hate to use the word trophy, especially the way it's used by the anti-hunting establishment. I have a very hard time just like, I'm going to hold out for this specific, you know, type of animal. I mean, I've killed so many whitetails, and then, you know, most of the time I will hold out for a special buck, something that it makes me excited. But like this past year, I mean, I shot like a little buck, like, in my opinion. And it's just about the experience and what I want out of that situation, or what I want out of that specific moment. It's not really I think hunters, we spend too much time obsessing over that, and we don't stop to smell the roses, you know, along the way. So It takes away a lot from the experience, I think. But
I think there's a lot to be said for that. For the Western states, I'm an opportunist. I want to. It's all new to me. It seems like everywhere I'm going, I just want to have that experience, and I almost need to bring some of that back into the whitetail side of things because I've been doing it for so long that it has become something where I put these big goals on myself, which are good. I mean, I enjoyed that process of it, but there's also the aspect that it can take a little bit of the fun out of it at times when when that's your only case. And I was talking to my dad about it recently, who I've said it on here plenty of times, but who I would say is one of the best whitetail hunters that I know and has been consistently successful for 45 years doing it. And one year he shot a deer. It was a 170-inch deer on public land in PA, which is almost unheard of to be able to do. And he spent the entire season hunting that deer. And then, the next year he had shot, still was a mature buck, but it was a 120-inch 8-point. And, I was talking to him about it, and he was like, for me, that deer was a special one that, he held out for, but he's like, something that still gets me just absolutely fired up. I call him in, he comes up with his hair standing on his back, and it's something I'm going to be happy with. He's like, there's no chance I'm going to let that go by. And I think there's a lot to be said from it. And I think we can put those pressures on ourselves and then also just seeing what others are doing, even if we don't want to admit it, you see other people are shooting big deer, and it starts getting in your own head. Like, I want to do that too. And it can definitely affect things.
Yeah, there's definitely a fine line to tiptoe between shooting something just to shoot something or shooting something that's going to make you happy regardless of what it is, and if it's not, like, if you're going to shoot something and you're going to be disappointed after you've done that, then don't do it.
Yeah.
Like, you should never, and I've had a couple moments, very few, thank God. I've had a couple of moments in my life where and two of them happened to be in this last year. Like I said, that whitetail, I afterwards I was like, why did I shoot this whitetail? Like, I was happy up until the moment that I pulled the trigger, and then I was like, and then the same thing with that muley. And those just reminded me of my, my normal mantra, just, be in the moment and have fun with, and take whatever is going to make you happy, And at that moment, I didn't need either one of those things to make me happy, so it didn't feel right. And it was just like I said, it was a good reminder.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. But, kind of circling back to the elk side of things. One thing that's always interesting to me with elk, or I mean, I guess it could go for any species, but to keep it particular on elk, just for narrowing down the conversation. When you're going into you hunted all these different states, are there things that you see similarly as far as, like, okay, I'm looking at a map or I'm going in a scouting area? Is there things that you see that are in common, that no matter if you're going to the high desert or if you're going to dark timber, that you see in common there?
Yes, to an extent, for sure. I mean, you could get really extreme if you're going to high desert and you're talking about high desert versus, dark timber. There's going to be some major differences.
Yeah.
But I tell people all the time, so if you have a honey hole in your state, okay, and this can even be somewhat translated from species to species, especially when you're talking about the deer species, like mule deer, whitetail, elk. Those are all deer species. Those all within the same moose. They all kind of use landscape in a very similar fashion. So if you have a honey hole in your home state, or in the state that you're going to be hunting, okay, like say you've been to a spot and you had really good elk hunting experience 2 years ago in this one area, If you examine that area and you see, okay, there's water here, there's cover there, there's intersecting ridge lines, there's benches, there's dark timber, there's feed and escape routes and all this stuff, and you kind of like really look at it and pick it apart. And you look at it in a way, how are they related to each other? How far apart are they? How does this connect to this? And you take that, you put that puzzle together and you take it and you find that those same components, maybe not exactly in the same connection to each other, but those same components, if you take it and you find that somewhere else on a map, 9 times out of 10, if you go to that place, you're going to find animals in that place also. Because the reason why they're in that honey hole is that habitat is offering them the things that they need: cover, water, food, escape routes, bedding, all that stuff. The way they use the landscape. So if you are able to take that and put it somewhere else, 9 times out of 10, I'll tell you, you're going to find animals. And that's one of the tools that I use, because people are like, how do you go from Arizona to Montana and this and that and so on and so forth, and you find success? Well, it's because I've done it enough that I can look at a map and say, okay, these are the things that I know elk need. And when I hunt in this state, this place where I found elk before has all these things. This place seemingly has all these things too. I should be able to find elk. I mean, assuming that there's elk in that unit or elk in that area, but yeah. So, that's always been a huge thing for me.
No, I think that's a really good way of answering it. I can relate that to whitetails so much from the standpoint of, where I hunt, there's no ag, it's just all timber in the Appalachian Mountain region. So it's just big timbered areas. And even when I'd go to other places, there's certain things that I know that a mature buck likes in the way that they like to travel. And you start going to different places and finding these things. Then you go to a new spot and those things kind of jump out at you. And it really takes a lot of that repetition to be able to identify that. But I think I think that was really well put, the way you said that. Like, even for example, you think of, say you were hunting in Colorado and you're in dark timber and you're up high and you find a spot like, okay, there was elk bedded here, they had some water down low here, they were feeding down lower, and just the way that the terrain laid out, and there was a nice bench there and everything else. And then you go to an open country spot and it's like, okay, find some things that are similar, but maybe there's not as much cover. So that kind of helps on that side of things, as far as like, okay, that narrows it down. Here's where the water's at, but sun's going to be playing more of a role in, where they're going to be bedding at. So looking at that, maybe it is more important for those northerly facing slopes versus in some areas that I found that it's just so much dark timber, it didn't seem to really matter if it was north facing or whatever facing it was.
The shade is there. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the shade is there. And I think, taking those things, and then also being able to apply what the conditions of the new area that you're going to have and making judgment calls with that. And if you're going to a new area, I'm assuming that you take what you just said and then you apply that and try to find X amount of those areas so that you always have backup plans.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. It's all done with a principle first, because I don't have boots on the ground. I don't have time to go scout. So I'm going to have 4 or 5 places that have this recipe based on the maps and on my cyber scouting. And then once I get there, I'm going to, pick the one that I like the best and start there and kind of in a hierarchy move my way through my list. And typically, if I make it to, spot number 3 and I'm not seeing what I don't like, then something is wrong with my formula, or something wrong with this area completely. So I know it's time to pull up stakes and maybe, go back to the drawing board.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And you said this year you have a tag in Montana. Have you been to the area before?
So last time I was in this area was 2014, I believe.
Okay.
And I got some intel from a friend of mine who was last in there in 2017. So I don't have any fresh intel. But I'm going to go check it out. I have that. And I also have another backup spot that another good friend of mine who's been on my podcast a few times, great elk hunter, gave me. But also, I don't think he's been in there since probably the same time, 2014 or something like that. He doesn't live in Montana anymore. So I kind of have those two. I was planning on maybe doing some more cyber scouting and coming up with, but those are my fallbacks right now, just because I have a starting point.
Yeah.
So, but I might just completely, because things change. I mean, hell, that's 10 years ago. Just the amount of people hunting has changed in that area because of, urban sprawl. So it's closer to bigger cities, bigger towns, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of stuff will change a hunting spot real quick. So,
yeah, I mean, just in Montana, that's a perfect example of a state that's grown in population.
mm-hmm.
Throw the non-residents out of it, just in the resident side of things has grown so much, even in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yep. 100%. So, yeah, it's a tough thing to do because, well, cyber scouting is always tough, but even when you have past intel, sometimes it almost hinders you because you're hanging on to this memory or you're hanging on to this idea,
mm-hmm.
and you really just don't know, but what's changed, I made it sound simple. You just take this thing and you plug this recipe in and you're going to find animals. There's obviously a lot of deciding factors with that. You have to be able to, one, look at fish and game statistics. But typically I look through all that stuff before I start going to the map anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll know, an area has this male to female ratio or has this density and has this success rates and so on and so forth. So once I have all that information and I have units picked out, that's when I can apply that recipe that I made. Sounds super simple. So
yeah. And I mean, when it comes down to the e-scouting or the cyber scouting there, even though you did make it sound simple, but when you go in and you're marking and dropping these waypoints, are you coming back to that and looking at it again? What else are you doing in addition to finding those spots you think you can find elk? Are there other things you're marking or paying attention to?
Yeah, of course, I'm going to mark my ingress and egress. How do I access the area? How close can I get with a vehicle? Can I bugle it, in the evening and from the roads to find starting points for the morning? Stuff like that. Sure. Look at all that stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know for me, it's whenever I first look at a map, it's kind of overwhelming when you're, whether it's elk hunting or whitetail hunting or whatever else. It's just you look at it and you're like, holy cow, there's all these things. And for me, it just helps to clear my head of just don't overthink it. Just drop waypoints on places that have things that look good and then kind of come back to it at a different day and start connecting more of the dots and adding more to it. And it's over a month's time frame, I finally feel like I have a good picture of what's going on there. And because it seems like every time you open the map, you look at it from a different angle. You turn the orientation on it. You start finding more things than you did the first time around.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed that I try not to do is to put too many waypoints or landscape features marked in an area. Like I'm not going to I'll drop, and I color code everything, but if I drop hey, this looks elky waypoint, I'll drop that and I'll leave it. I won't put why. I won't drop that waypoint unless I know there's X amount of these landscape features and water and feed and blah, blah, blah within a close enough proximity to it. So if I drop it, then once I'm there, I'll start marking like on my hiking. Okay, cool. We found the wallow here, or we found, this, we found that. And that's when I start marking things. So I have a better idea for the next day or for whatever, how I want to hunt it, more specifically.
Gotcha. So you're not overcomplicating it as far as you want to have a good idea where you need to be at, and then once you get in there, figure it out a little bit more.
Yeah. Otherwise, you just end up with a very confusing mess. And I'm going to show you something here that those people who are just listening are obviously not going to be able to see this, but just to give you an example, that's what my Arizona looks like. If I start expanding that out, like there's just waypoints everywhere.
Yeah. I mean,
there's thousands of waypoints. Like you can't even see the state of Arizona when I zoom out. It's like, and then I start zooming out to the rest of the country and you'll see the same, like you'll see that. And it's just too much. Like, okay, what the hell does this red X over here mean? I have too many of the red X things, Yeah. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that I transferred when I got Onyx, I don't know how many years ago. It was 2015 or something like that. When they came to the online app, I transferred all my waypoints from my GPS.
Oh, okay.
So I used to go in here and like find water holes and drop water holes in there, and and then of course everywhere I went hunting, I was dropping places and so on and so forth. It's just it gets pretty crazy. So you gotta, and I know there's ways you could do it with folders and stuff now. They've made it so it's a little bit more organized, but
well, when I had switched from using Onyx primarily to Spartan Forge, I purposely didn't transfer over any waypoints so I could start fresh, and I would still keep the other one there if I needed to refer back to anything. But it was like a freeing feeling to look at a clean map again and be able to do that, because I did that originally with Onyx from the GPS, and I did the same thing, and it didn't transfer over the icons and the colors, all that different stuff that was over to it. So it made it super difficult, and really the waypoints weren't really any good to me anymore. I'm like, was that a scrape? Was that a rub? What was the so now I also make sure I put it in the detail, especially if I'm in person, in the notes, in the description, like all that stuff, so that I know what it is.
Right. Yeah. And I use the Goat Hunt app, and I use the map also, and I use the base map. And I'll go back and forth between all of them, but because Onyx has the most information on there and it's been around the longest, it's my main.
Your primary one.
Yeah. I haven't used the Spartan Forge. I've heard nice things about it, but I haven't gotten into it, played with it yet. So.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's such a place for using different tools with that, and, Google Earth and other, the state website maps that have them to be able to find. Sometimes you find roads and different stuff in there that that you might not see in the apps. I was just doing that in Montana, and I compared 3 different apps, and it didn't have some roads that were open on it, labeled. So it was like, okay, that it's good to be able to compare across the board there.
Sure. absolutely. Yeah.
But go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna go back to, you'd mentioned quite a few times about deer hunting and some of that kind of, you talked about liking that late season, at least that's the way I look at it, but the rut in Arizona. And so describe that type of hunt a little bit for us.
Well, it's since changed a lot, but it's still a very good hunt. We had a couple years in a row where our deer herd just got pounded by hunting and by weather cycle. And we had a couple of really dry years where there wasn't good fawn crop. And as a result, because it was really dry years, people were sitting water, and our success rate, I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm going to give you some like arbitrary numbers to give you an idea. So we went from like an 11% success rate to like 60 or 70% success rate. It was like pretty ridiculous. So they killed a lot of deer. And it was because they were tied to water. They couldn't, they had to come in to get water. Mm-hmm. And as a result, a lot of deer died. And they put in a quota system now. So you can only harvest, X amount of deer in a unit. And once that unit reaches its quota, it closes down. Where before you'd come and you'd have free run of the whole state with your statewide tag, basically. And so that's changed the dynamic of the hunt a lot, the quality of the hunt, because I think I mentioned it earlier, you'll get crowding. You'll have 300 people in a unit hunting, and that unit closes. So what do? They move from that unit to the unit that's across the street. And now instead of 200 people in that unit, there's 400 people, and so on and so forth. And it just keeps happening. And as you get close to the end, of the season, only those units that are left remaining open have a lot of traffic in it. So it really takes away from the experience of the hunt. It also takes away from how you're going to hunt it. It's no longer, okay, I'm just going to get up on a high point in glass or whatever. You just got to get more creative, because the animals are there and they're figuring out ways to avoid humans. And some of that might be becoming more nocturnal. Some of that will be seeking places that humans don't go, that stuff. So it changes the way you hunt. I don't know if I answered that question. What was the question?
It was about the late deer hunts there, which, no, that's good, because you did mention it earlier, and I wanted to ask about or talk about that, was like how those units close after they're filled. So is that at the end of the night? Is that what you have to check like every day? You have to check, or how does that work?
You have to check in. But there is, and I forgot exactly what it is. I think it closes on the Wednesday following the last reported. So they can go over. And it a lot of times will go over.
Yeah. So what are you gonna do? You're on a stalk, and all of a sudden you get an inReach message from the state. All right, you're done.
Yeah, exactly. There's some overlap. It's not a great system. I know why they did it, and I actually advocated for it quite a bit when it was coming out, because it seemed like the lesser of evils. It's not the greatest system. I would almost. Well, so we have 3 archery seasons. We have August, end of August, beginning of September is one. We got pretty much 3 weeks in December is 2, and then the whole month of January is 3. Now, January starts your tag. Obviously, it's a new calendar year, so it starts your tag. So it goes January, the August season, and then December. But the quota restarts in August. So by the time January comes along, which is typically the best hunting conditions, you might even have units already closed before January 1st is open.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for the current system, not that you and I are going to change any minds right now, but I think the current system, if it had a quota for each season, would be best. So like if you can only take 9 deer out of this unit, then 3 would be in August, 3 would be in December, and 3 would be in January. I think that would have, one, it would give people more opportunity. It would eliminate some of the crowding. I think it would also eliminate some of the pinpointing on deer that are in certain areas at certain times of the year. Like, you know, they're in there for a reason, and we're going in there to disrupt that. With hunting, maybe if it's not as, you know, that many people in there, it won't disrupt it, and they're, you know, they're able to get whatever it is that they're in there for, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Is it like when you were talking about the crowding and saying, you know, it could be 300 people in a unit or whatever? I mean, is it where you get to a glassing knob and you're seeing other hunters?
Yeah, especially
like
guys from Pennsylvania.
Really?
I actually had a run-in with a guy from Pennsylvania a couple of years ago. This was right before they implemented this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I lost my shit on him. I should actually tell that story just because I brought it up. I was joking around.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, so Charles and I were hunting, and this was that really dry year, and him and I committed not to sitting on water holes, or trying not to sit on water holes that often. We're driving down the highway. Charles actually spots this buck from the road, and he's like, "Hey, there's a big buck over there with, like, I don't know how many does he had with him, but a bunch of does." So we pull up. I parked the truck on the side of the highway, and we devise a plan to swing way around to get the wind right and come back at him. And we did that. So we bust our butts and get all the way back there and come around the long way, and we're coming back to him. And I see this truck pull up, like almost in line with the deer at the highway. 3 guys get out. They start making their way straight at the deer, not even thinking about the wind, nothing, like straight at the deer. And I'm like, what are these guys doing? You know? And so I'm like, well, let's keep getting in there. Hopefully we'll get in close enough. And I'm going to try to predator call at them to see if we can get them to pull them over towards us, because we don't have a whole lot of time before these guys screw it up. And they're just kind of marching in. Well, long story short, they bust all the deer out because they winded them, and they took off into a different county. Well, they get back in their truck and they haul off, and we're quite a ways away, and we're running to the truck. We jump in the truck, and I look over at Charles and go, there's no way they're outrunning the raptor. I was being like a total jerk at my raptor. Anyway, so I jump in them to like 130 miles an hour down the highway to catch him, and I pull up next to him, and I kind of like pull him to the side of the road like a cop would. And I roll down my window. I'm like, we don't do this shit here in Arizona. You the guys, I'm like, you guys saw us. I know you did. And they were from Pennsylvania. And I'm like, because my truck was right there. Like, I know they knew that we were there. And they couldn't miss us. And I just kind of like lit them up. And I was like, all right, whatever. I don't know why I had to do that, but I had to do that. Like, I was frustrated, I think, Well, the backstory to this is we had 3 or 4 other stalks interrupted by other hunters, and they were always out-of-state hunters. And I was like, and I'm an out-of-state hunter like all the time, so I don't have a problem with out-of-state hunting. Like, I go everywhere. But if you're going to go somewhere, respect the code of ethics,
Yeah.
And so.
Well, yeah, and I mean, to me, it's like, all right, you see a deer alongside the road, and there was a truck parked there. There's probably a good chance that truck and whoever was in there is going after that deer.
Oh yeah,
that's one of those situations where it's just like keep moving along.
I can physically see them see us, Like
Okay.
they point. I knew they knew that we were there. So it was like intentional. Like, what were you like thinking that was going to happen?
Yeah.
You know, like they physically took the shortcut because they wanted to try to get an opportunity before we did.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like,
That.
I mean, I'm joking about the whole Pennsylvania thing, but I know that stuff happens back east a lot. I've been in that combat hunting warfare. That I stopped. Actually, my dad stopped taking me during the rifle hunts because of altercations, and I was like, you know, hunters, we're our own worst enemy, man. Like
Yeah. In a
the
lot of
shit
ways.
that we do and say, like that's why. Then we wonder why we're in the position that we are. You know,
I will say it's gotten better back
it
east.
has
It has gotten a lot better,
a lot
and
better.
people typically respect. I mean, you still have those situations, but it's not nearly as bad as I remember even as a kid growing up and doing it.
Really
Yeah,
bad.
yeah,
As a kid, it was really, really bad. I also don't rifle hunt back east anymore, so I don't know. Definitely within the bow hunting crowd, I think there's a little bit more respect for each other. I don't. I might be, hopefully I'm not trying to alienate anybody either, but yeah, it's definitely gotten better over the years. But in the 80s, forget about it. It was my dad had guns pulled on him. It was like he shot a buck. This was in upstate New York. We were in Deposit. Actually, I wasn't with him. He was with my Uncle Joe, and he shoots a buck, the biggest buck of his life at the time. Buck goes running off. He sees it crash. But his brother, Joe, was hunting, a couple 100 yards a different direction, and he didn't want to disturb the area, so he didn't go over there to go retrieve it. He just sat down and waited, and he gets up finally, and he starts walking over towards the deer, and he hears two shots. Boom, boom. Like from that direction. Gets over there, and there's two guys standing there. And my dad saw the deer go down. He knows he made a good shot. Got over there, and the guy's arguing with him, no, that this is my deer. We shot this deer. And that guy shot twice. There was only one gun hole, one shot in the deer. So he just shot up in the air, And it was just like, he didn't want to fight. It was just him, and there was two guys, and they kind of pointed the rifles at him. It was like, you know what? That was the day that my dad stopped taking me on opening weekend for the rifle season. So
that would be a good reason to stop there for sure. No, and like I said, I think it's definitely improved quite a bit. And in Pennsylvania, we have the most hunters per square mile out of all the states, and it's really not that bad. Opening day of rifle season is probably the worst, but it's still not as bad as it used to be from that standpoint. But what has that changed at all? Has it changed things with in Arizona with the whole ban on the trail cameras?
So the trail camera thing was funny, man. It was a really funny thing because there really wasn't a widespread issue. What it was there was a couple of units. Again, I hate to use this word, but they're trophy units, like Unit 9, Unit 10, where you'd have, or on the Kaibab or the Strip, okay, literally a handful of units, 5-6 units over the 40 whatever units that we have, where you would have 10 trail cameras on one water hole, because every outfitter was trying to get pictures of the biggest, baddest. And what was happening was somebody would go in there and hunt, wake up earlier than everybody, whatever, first come, first serve, get in there and hunt. And then somebody would come check the trail camera while this person was on the water hole. So there was no respect. No, there's the guy there. People know he's there because, most of these water holes have roads leaning into them. And if you're checking a trail cam, you're probably going to drive up as close as you possibly can. You're not hiking in from, so you pass this guy's truck whatever, 500-600 yards away from the water hole. Somebody's in there, and you just go in there and check your trail camera. And I think it got worse because the year before or 2 years before, I don't remember exactly the dates, they banned the cell cam. So like, hey, I didn't have to go in there to check in my, when I had a cell cam, I could just get the picture and I know what's going on, right? You banned the cell cam thing, so now a guy's got to go in there. So now there was conflict. There's a couple of complaints about it. And so the commission was like, yeah, we don't want to deal with it, so we're just going to ban it completely. And that's exactly what happened. Like, I'm really oversimplified it. And I tell people this all the time. If there is a people issue, like this trail camera thing, and there's hunters on both sides of the fence of it, 99% of the time, it's going to go to the side that the anti-hunters are on. So I want you to think about that. So if you are worried about this guy who's got a leg up because he's using a trail camera, and that's your motivation for trying to stop him from using trail cameras, you're actually helping the anti-hunters almost all the time.
Yeah. I mean, we're seeing it in the whitetail states right now with the trail camera bans. I mean, they're going across the board. It started with Kansas, Iowa just did it. I don't know if it actually went through, if there just talks about it in Kentucky. I mean, there's it's coming across the board from, and it's just this, you're exactly right. It's going down a very crazy path. And a lot of times what I hear is because, I use quite a few trail cameras, and people be like, oh, I go into an area and I see a bunch of trail cameras, and, and they get, they get mad about it. And I can understand that, like seeing a bunch of cameras and you're like, oh, whatever. But it's usually if they don't want to use cameras, or they aren't using cameras, that they're the ones that are like, why does this person get to do that? Versus like, from the cell cam aspect,
you can do it. Yeah.
From the cell cam aspect, it's like, all right, those people aren't walking in there and putting scent in there and blowing out these animals by staying out of it. And half the time the people don't hunt unless they get a picture on their camera, which, normally it's too late at that point. So it's like, I don't know, to me, it kind of reduces the pressure from that standpoint, but what do I know?
Yeah. Yeah. Again, people problems, like, we're our own worst enemy. We waste, how many people have got their up in arms about that stuff, but didn't get involved in something that was actually going to take away hunting?
Yeah,
it happens all the time. It's so stupid. And, there's a point where enough is enough, right? We can't let technology completely run. And I don't know where that line is. And, but it's something that we all accepted and we were all using. And now we've let somebody who is not doing it. Okay, so don't do it. They're not doing it, but now they don't want you to do it either. And I think that's, that's foolish, and it's pretty typical of the world we live in right now. But
and what was crazy to me too, because and I struggle with that line a lot of like, okay, where is too far with the technology? And I try to think about it from all sides and all angles. But when it comes down to, like, say, the trail camera thing, and the argument that I hear a lot for cell cameras is that, in agricultural areas, whitetail stuff, people have them on, every corner of their field. They know where this deer's coming out and they can get in and make a move. And do I think that's, for me, that's not something I would feel good about doing. But what typically happens is they typically ban it on the public ground first, where that's not even a possibility of working out that way. So it's like, okay, all this complaining went to just hurt the people that are doing it here. And it's just, I don't know. It is a tough one.
Yeah. It's the same thing as like, hunting, high fence versus public land, or private land versus public land. Like, okay, you shot this thing. you're happy with it. I'm not going to look at you as I look at somebody else who shot that same caliber of animal on public land and you shot it behind a high fence, but I'm also not going to stop you from doing it. I'm just not going to give you the same, I don't want to use the word respect because but it's the only word I can think of right now. I'm not going to put the same accolades or whatever. I'm not going to associate the same kudos to your success as I would if somebody did that, in a different fashion, I guess. But
and it when it comes to like the public private thing, for me, I mostly hunt public because that's what I have the opportunity to be able to do. But I also, when I have the opportunity to hunt private, I will. Like, I don't have a problem with that at all. And like the way I've looked at it, especially in the whitetail space, this is something and maybe it's the same in the Western world, but I see it a lot where it's like, oh, this person's got this big, beautiful farm and they've manipulated that property to be able to have this success and do that. I'm like, yeah, well, they've also put in a lot of that time. Instead of the time scouting, maybe they're putting the time into building those food plots, doing that. They had to work their asses off in their career or their business to get the money to be able to get to there. And like, to me, it's like, it's the same thing, but different aspects of going at it.
You always want to take away from somebody's success. And you see it a lot in the hunting industry.
Yeah.
There's a lot of jealousy. There's a lot of, if this guy's doing it, he must be cheating. Why can't I do it? He must be. I haven't been able to do it for 20 years. Why is this guy doing it every year? Oh, he must be cheating. Man, that's another hour-long podcast.
Yeah.
Us going down a road that I don't know that I'm qualified to talk about. I mean, I just know from what I've seen and what I've experienced in this industry, and in this community. It's
No, I mean, it comes down to, what we talked about back earlier in the first part of the episode that we discussed is, we're all sportsmen and women, and we got to look at it from the ideals of hunting and what is good for hunting and for us to be able to do it and try not to worry about what everybody else is doing too, as long as it's an ethical, which
exactly,
again, we're going to stop that conversation.
That's another.
Yeah. I was just, as soon as I said that, I was like, okay, well then what's ethical to this person, to that person? Oh man.
Yeah.
But John, I appreciate you taking the time and coming back on and getting to dive into some more detail there. I enjoyed getting to know you a little better and learn some more. And we'll have to do this again and
sure.
Dive into something specific and talk about it. I know I was kind of all over the place with the questions, but it was like when first time having a guest on, and I've known about you and everything, but just trying to get to know you a little better. And I think you gave a lot of really good information, and you've got a ton of experience and real life success with it. So I appreciate that. No,
thanks. And I appreciate you having me on. I'm going to get you on my podcast. Definitely think you got something to offer. We can shoot the shit on my podcast here and get you on pretty soon. And we'll let my listeners get a taste of who you are.
Yeah, sounds good. And so for everyone that's listening, I'll give you the spiel for you since I remembered it from the last time. But just you can follow John's personal page at John Stallone on Instagram or howlforwildlife.org. Sign up there. You need to become a free member. Paid members is helpful, and get signed up for the action alerts there and everything else. So
awesome. Thank you, man.
Hey guys, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with your buddies. Leave us a rating, a review, and subscribe. If you want to check out more content like this, there's plenty in the links below. We truly appreciate having you guys along with us.